Lauren and DJ
Fotsch.
Like Scotch.
Yes.
Being open to just reaching out to any and all people that work in those types of areas and saying, hey, I have a similar experience. I saw you did this here, and kind of just going from that route.
This is something that for a lot of our STEM students is that's terrifying.
That's one of the great things about like the tech world is you don't really have a lot of the same story. Everyone has a different background. I think that kind of what makes it human.
I think a lot of those like really small companies or just like in very unique things can lead to like really interesting opportunities. I mean, like my second internship and my first one in California was at a company that did x-ray inspecting of food packaging. And then like that random like x-ray experience when like the antenna team was looking for someone was like, oh, this kid has actually had some experience. And it's like, I never would have thought that like Apple would care about, you know, how I had worked on x-raying food packaging.
Welcome to SEL Podcast, filmed in the MD Acoustics Anechoic Chamber in beautiful Gilbert, Arizona. Today we welcome an enterprising power couple, Lauren Fotsch, an expert in marketing and data analysis, and DJ Fotsch, an expert in manufacturing and mechanical engineering. Each episode, we bring you compelling conversations, practical advice, and illuminating stories from the minds of industry leaders, educators, innovators, and visionaries who are shaping the world one idea at a time.
Welcome, everybody, to the Soundcade Labs podcast. Today, I'm your host, Robert Pearson. We've got Samuel Horde and Mike Dickerson here with us. And today's guest is Lauren and DJ Fotsch. Like Scotch.
Yes.
That's what we said, right?
Yes.
So, Lauren and DJ Fotsch.
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
Tell us about yourselves. Where are you guys from? Where did you go to school?
Yeah. Lauren, go ahead.
I'll start. I'm from Wisconsin. I went to school at Notre Dame in Indiana and was in the Midwest pretty much my whole life until I met this guy here that when I was at Notre Dame, I studied math and economics. I come from a STEM family, so my dad's an engineer, my mom's a nurse, my older brother's a dentist, but math was always, I liked science, but really liked math. When I was at Notre Dame, a lot of people were doing like, they were going to be actuaries or they were like financial investment bankers that really wanted to get into the math side of things. Neither of those were like really that interesting to me, so I just kind of kept going with the math thing and fell into consulting because I didn't know what I wanted to do with the math thing. And then once I met DJ over here, he was going out to California and tech sounded pretty interesting, and lo and behold, analytics was really kind of taking off. Not that it hadn't before, but it was really becoming large in a lot of companies. So from there I went into PayPal and I worked in the digital marketing experimentation group. A lot of A/B testing on the website, you know, like blue button, red button, oversimplification, but you know, which one makes people click more, things of that nature, which was really interesting because it did a lot of the statistics that I had done in school. And then Netflix reached out and they wanted to know if I wanted to do some similar things there. So went over to Netflix, did some of that for a little bit in the marketing group, and now I'm in the partnerships group. So it's more on the product side, work with partners like Samsung. When you see that icon on the smart TV, when you fire up your smart TV, that's my team. That's what we do. We look at the financial modeling, we look at, you know, the negotiations around it, help the business development team kind of pursue those different avenues and those tests that we do with them. And I've been there ever since, so it's been a good run and hope to continue working there. It's really interesting.
Wow. I would have never thought that a degree in math would have led you down that path. I always just thought, you know, math was just what nerds do.
Yeah. You know, and I think I
mean, I was never good at math, so, you know, thank the Lord above for calculators, because if I didn't have them...
Well, initially I started in theoretical math, and there was the, like, proving out that numbers were, like, 1 + 1 = 2, and that was, like... I remember sitting in final and being like, this is really great for someone else, like not for me. Very interesting, but applied mathematics then was like, oh, this, you know, I get this. You know, you're talking about like, you know, not that I'm a gambler, but you talked about like, you know, cards and how they like the probabilities around it. And I thought it was, you know, interesting, but just hoped that avenues would open up around like something I thought was really interesting, and thankfully Silicon Valley had lots of those, so I just had to kind of find my way there via DJ, which was a nice add-in to my life and my career.
Yeah.
Yeah, and DJ, where'd you go to school? You didn't go to Notre Dame, right?
I did not. I went to Marquette in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I would say almost like the reverse of Lauren. Well, not the reverse, but in high school I was like, I have literally no idea where I want to go to school. I was always kind of a tinkerer, so like really enjoyed like buying a bunch of bike parts, like putting them all together, building ramps with my friends. I would say we were maybe a little bit more delinquent in the sense that I like attached a string to a nail gun so you could like shoot it for darts. So just always
No one was
kind of,
harmed.
Yeah. No one lost any fingers or took any nails to arms, legs, or I still have all 10 fingers. So just always really enjoyed building things, and so I think that's what led me into the mechanical field in general.
Gotcha.
I'm picturing like a posse like in Hot Rod, like.
Oh yeah. Rolling on our fixed gear bikes around,
go.
Coolest kids on the block for sure.
DJ, you were in college. You were working for Apple,
Yeah.
right? That made you take a year off, and then you continued with Apple, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So while I was an intern, had worked essentially when I arrived, it was kind of interesting at Apple. They just like had like very broad job postings. It was basically like, we're looking for a mechanical engineer, and that was all the job postings said. So when I arrived on the first day, my boss was like, oh, like, what are you like, what's your hobbies, what are your interests, sort of thing. And I was like, oh, I really enjoy like prototyping, I enjoy building things, all that kind of stuff. And I found out, so I was part of the antenna team, and I found out they had like a full machine shop essentially. And so he was like, oh, what would you think of working back in here? And I was like, oh, that would be so much fun. And so I got to learn to use a lot of different equipment that I hadn't used previously. So at Marquette, they had like a full shop, but those, like CNC mill, those kinds of things, but they didn't have like, there were some lasers, there was like a CT scanner, because a big thing for antennas is when you're doing any sort of FA, the second you open up the unit, you're destroying any sort of leads you could get from how the device was working. And so the non-destructive testing was a huge piece. And so getting to just be a part of all this like crazy prototyping was really fun for a year. And so that's what I came back to do when I first started, and even got to buy all the equipment for a new shop when we moved over to like the spaceship area. But of course, for like a career growth, that's not necessarily the greatest position to be in, because while it's a super fun, interesting thing to work on all this new technology, all these new products, because you're essentially making like mock-ups of these various new products, you're only FaceTiming with the antenna team. There's so many other teams within Apple, and so to become a bigger part of the company for myself ended up going into the iPhone test space. So still under like the wireless umbrella, but got to work on a lot more things.
Gotcha.
What does FA stand for?
Failure analysis.
Failure analysis.
So anytime we would, so at Apple, there's like a triage process where like first it would go to a team, like essentially customer support, and they would take it and they would put the device through essentially a mini test line. So we have like a huge test line in the factory that tests all the various components on a phone. And so to make sure like, hey, is this just like somehow an escape where like it should have failed the test but somehow made it into the field? And so they'll test it, and if there's nothing, like no obvious red flag, they'll send it back to the engineers, and so then we would start our FA.
Gotcha.
And so you're saying from destructive testing, you're literally
Yeah.
saying once you rip a phone apart or something apart,
Yeah.
you've disconnected all the electrical leads, which helps you not assess what's going on?
So it's not that it disconnects the electrical leads, it's just that when they're doing the assembly process, I'd say like when I first joined the wireless team, I referred to like the radio frequency space as essentially black magic, where like you like turn a screw too tight, all of a sudden nothing works. And so I think that just any little like thing you end up like hitting while you're taking off the phone because the front glass or the back glass, because those are adhesive on, you're potentially pulling apart maybe like a little foam piece that was compressing some critical component where like if it didn't have the proper compression, like all of a sudden the like tuning of the antenna is totally off. And so there's like, I am no expert in the RF field, but there's just so many little pieces that can lead to problems with your antennas, so that just like the antenna engineers were like, we do not want to touch anything. So that was a big reason for having the CT scanner.
So what you're telling me is I shouldn't open my phone?
Yes, I would definitely not recommend it.
Were you with Apple when they brought in like 5G?
Yeah, so I was part of the team that did the so there are essentially two different types of 5G. So there's like the 5G that you'll see on your phone as like 5GE, which is essentially the lower bands of 5G. So that's like the more traditional cell towers, and when you have those lower bands, essentially the signal can travel further. And then so the 5G plus, which shows up on your phone, is essentially the 5G that we were working on for that specific year. And so essentially what makes that 5G different is it's a higher frequency, and so it can't travel as far. So like, for example, if you're in like a really big spot that they want to use the higher wavelength 5G is in stadiums, because you like in the past you would notice like you'd go to an NFL stadium or MLB stadium, whatever, and then all of a sudden your cell service was terrible because everyone's trying to make calls, everyone's trying to do various things, and so it just like totally blocked the entire system.
And so
selfies. Yes. Have to
and
upload your have to upload all your good selfies.
You got to show the whole game on your Snapchat.
Yes,
live stream.
Of course. Yeah, live stream the entire event. You know, maybe some people couldn't afford tickets, so you have to look out.
Or don't have cable.
Cable's expensive.
Yeah.
And
do
so
people still have cable in 2024?
I don't know. Maybe some people do.
We do fight against that. I mean, on Netflix, we're still chipping away at the cable users for sure.
Wow. I'm surprised.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but sorry, to finish anyway, the nice thing about this like higher wavelength 5G is you have a bunch of points within the stadium that are emitting cellular signals, and so then it enables like much quicker, sending of selfies or live streaming the event, like what have you, and so you end up with a much more versatile product. And then also it's what enables these like at-home internet that you don't have to like connect to anything, because you're close enough to some 5G tower where like you have that much quicker download upload than you have over that like super long distance with those lower frequencies.
I find it amazing that it's years to perfect the engineering process, right? It's not like something that happens overnight.
No.
You've got hundreds, if not thousands, of engineers. And this goes across not just for Apple and for other products. If you're in a startup, which we'll get to in a little bit, but like really, when you're developing a system or products and then testing, it's a tremendous effort. And then after many years, you've perfected the process, and then people think, the general public thinks you're going to come out with the next big product, but to steer that ship, a lot of time, just in engineering and manpower.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's crazy. Like, that's amazing to me.
Lauren, I did want to ask, you said you went into consulting. Were you in the tech sector with consulting? What kind of things did you do there?
I worked for Accenture, so they are more in the tech space, but I was actually in the strategy consulting arm of things. So it was more akin to, the companies you think of like McKinsey or BCG or Bain that do core strategy. Accenture kind of had an arm of that was bidding for that same type of work. So I did a variety of things. I was fresh out of college, so I felt like I really did a variety of things there because I was just kind of doing whatever they wanted me to do. I didn't have like an industry specific client at the time. I was kind of all over the place. So I worked in the chemicals area on the East Coast. I did a couple like telecommunications, customers. A lot of it was around like organization kind of rearranging, and not necessarily mergers and acquisitions, but like companies that were looking for the help of a consulting agency to make a transition within an organization. So whether that's like merging two customer service organizations and like how to best do that and kind of optimize employees and processes. So a lot of it was kind of on the front end, and then the execution piece was bid out to another consulting agency, or maybe even Accenture, that they really did the kind of like execution of it. So we were really in the like lots of PowerPoints, and it was like the ideas portion of a lot of it. A lot of value in it, but I would say it was more high level, which was great. But I really disliked the just do one thing and then move on. I liked the execution of it, I think, a little bit more than maybe I thought I would, because that's really where a lot of the like analytics comes into play, and that's really where I kind of found myself wanting to do more of that, and then leading into a job in tech was a natural step.
I assume that's what led you to the PayPal and then Netflix, and obviously we can kind of think of 1,000 reasons Netflix would use analytics.
Yep.
Obviously, because "Are you still watching?" is what we all get.
Yes.
And there's a reason for that. So Lauren, you worked in digital marketing. You did A&D testing. What is that?
So, I mean, it can take on a variety of forms. I think at the time that I was at PayPal, that was when they were acquiring Venmo, and there was a lot of like new services that were happening. So a lot of the digital marketing space was around, new platforms. I guess I'm jumping a little bit to Netflix, but when you think of all these titles we had, right? It was a lot of the like how to serve the best thing to the best person at the best time. So it wasn't just, I kind of oversimplified it, right, with a blue and a red button of what the testing, came to, of like how do we drive more traffic and more click through and whatever the metric of target is there. But I think at Netflix really took it to the next level, where you're doing it on a automated scaled basis, where you're really trying to have a variety of tests and designs that then can fit anyone. So it's an extension of the product when you talk about the "Are you still watching?" "Continue watching," all of these targeted algorithms, right, that you're being served. Netflix, I think right now the big conversation is AI is such a big word everywhere, but like Netflix has always really been doing the machine learning AI kind of components because of the recommendations aspect. So a lot of that within digital marketing was trying to take that and apply it outside of the product in a way that was not intrusive to people. Like, you're already a Netflix user, you probably don't want to see that, right? So trying to be able to recognize people that are Netflix users and not serve them, and then spend the money most efficiently for those people that aren't. So PayPal a little bit different, but Netflix I think was more sophisticated in the way that they were applying that.
Gotcha. Yeah, you talked about AI in that, and that's you've left Apple.
Correct.
Since now you're working for Humane.
Yes.
Correct.
What's on your?
I was gonna say, you got a little
lapel
thing. I know.
Who are you wearing?
It's been the elephant in the room.
Kind of a hot topic.
Yeah. It's funny that you lead with the "Who are you wearing today?" because a big we've now been involved in more than one fashion show where like they'll like, because the big thing is like the pin is supposed to be not only like an extension of your phone, a wearable that lets you use your phone a little bit less, but also is supposed to be a bit of like a fashion accessory, but also so I would say this is like the most showy one. It's white with the high gloss finish on the outside, but there's another model that's all black, and so it much more like blends into your clothes, and so it's supposed to be that kind of, I guess, at like the intersection of technology and fashion is sort of the pitch. But so what it, I guess, to say what it does though, is it's essentially an AI wearable. So a big piece of the software is that it's LLM agnostic. So if like essentially if one day in the future the hope is that like the user would be able to pick like, hey, I'm really interested in using like this new Anthropic large language model, or no, tomorrow I'm like really feeling OpenAI is crushing it and I want to switch to that. And so the nice thing is like our system really is just that like branch to like reach out to all those different things. So like if you ask it about a restaurant around the corner, it will use something like Google Place to like say like, oh, what are the reviews on that, what's on their menu, and so to give you just like a little bit of tidbit on like what's happening there. And to me, what I'd almost say is it's almost like a nice like second brain to a certain extent, where like since we just moved to Arizona, we're like trying to meet a lot of people and learn so many names, learn so many things about them. So when I like get in the car, when I'm done, I'll do like almost like a little debrief with myself, and I'll be like, hey, like I was just with Mike. He works in Acoustics. Like, this is a little bit about him. And then I can then when, I'm coming back, I can be like, oh, like, what was that thing we were talking about? And then I can get like that little debrief. And so it's really nice to just have all that at your fingertips. Or if it's like, you're looking in the fridge and you're like, oh, like, okay, don't forget to get this. And then you just have that like instant
We need to get one
interaction.
for him to remember your last name. Just Fotsch, like Scotch.
Yeah.
That's why we got
That's a perfect use case for it.
I think that it's like the perfect tool for a new parent, because I would say one thing is like now our daughter is 16 months and she's getting to the point where I take out my phone and like the interaction changes, where like she wants to grab the phone, she wants to pull up her favorite videos, she wants to look at pictures of herself, she wants to look at videos of herself. Whereas with the pin, all you do is like you double tap and then it like takes a picture, or you like do something else, and so now it's taking a picture. But anyway, like, or like you can take videos. So like I can be, it feels so cliche, but like like one of our favorite things to do is like at the end of the day, you can like pull up all these on your phone or your computer and you can look through the images, and the like emotional reaction you have to it is so different because the memory doesn't include like a phone that was sitting in your face.
What do you have to say to people's concerns with AI? Because you hear a lot of it,
yes.
right? Like,
yes, I would. My first thing I always say to people that are concerned with AI is that AI is not as smart as that everyone thinks it is. I think what AI is a great tool to like assist in your daily life or like help you get to information more quickly. But if you're not looking at that information and like really going through it with a fine-tooth comb, I think you can end up doing yourself a disservice. So I'd say like I was actually talking to I think someone else in my class, and I was saying it's essentially like the modern day Wikipedia for like those that were using Wikipedia back in the day to find sources. Essentially, like scrolling to the bottom of the document, okay, that's the actual source. So I think that AI can do exactly that. Like it can create like an awesome outline for a paper for you so that like you're not slogging through and like procrastinating. So then it's like, okay, yes, this is my outline, and like how can I build that outline? But I don't think it's to the point where, everyone's fear is, oh my gosh, is it going to take my job? I don't think it's at that point just yet, but I think as an assistant to your everyday life, and like, obviously going back to the pin, I think that it is like in that state where it can just be like additive to your everyday life.
I could see it for field work.
Yeah.
Legit. Like I could see it where you're out in the field and instead of writing stuff down, you could use your phone, but the thing is, our hands are filled with instrumentation, whatever it is, and away you go.
There's a lot of things that could actually be really helpful with.
I feel like it sounds a lot less threatening when you change that A to assistant intelligence instead of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, on the entertainment side, we recently had our co-CEO come and talk to us in terms of with the Writers Guild and just the writers. A lot of people think, or in the media, it's like, are you gonna be able to write a movie script with AI? And our co-CEO who runs the content side, Ted, was like, that's not what I'm seeing. And he's talking in an internal group. He's talking about, I'm seeing, famous name here, there, everywhere type of thing. They're using it to get through writer's block, right? They're finding a word that, like to your point around an encyclopedia, you're just not going to be able to, I need a 4-letter word that rhymes with X to, complete this verse. And then they move on, right? Instead of being stuck with writer's block. Or like in post-production, talking about how there was a short, or there was a scene that the director never shot from a long shot. And they were able to do that in post, when in the past they were never able to do something like that. So just certain things that, I think the whole job security, component is challenging when you think, can replace this whole process? But really, what he was seeing from the creative side or the entertainment side was it was helping get through kind of these sticky points, where it was like to go back and reshoot that in production for this movie scene would have cost millions of dollars. Whereas they were able to do this, and it satisfied, the type A perfectionist of this director, and really those kind of applications, I think, are much more human when you think of writer's block or those types of things. On my side, on the product side, the applications are different, but I think that was an interesting take he had on the creative side, because I don't always get the exposure to that.
I think
side.
just quickly adding on to that, So there was a class at Wharton that essentially did a study on like I think it was the assignment was like come up with 6 ideas, and they had like AI also do the exact same thing. And an interesting piece was they were like at the sellability, the AI did well because the AI just has like all these existing products and can make a product very similar. But then on like was something more unique and creative, like the students crushed it because all it has is past information, they can't predict future information.
Imagination.
Yeah, and all
from
those
an
kinds of
innovation,
things.
it can't innovate. It can
Right.
just kind of duplicate in ways.
Right.
So, for Humane, what exactly is your role?
Yeah.
I mean, are you helping develop it? What's kind of the challenges of this new product that, obviously is very slick, very sleek. I believe you guys have some engineers and stuff that came over from Apple to help do it. So there's some similarities there, right? Tell me about it.
Yeah, so my specific role, so I mentioned briefly, so doing a part-time MBA at UCLA. So I would say when leaving Apple, my goal was to not be so like hard. So I was part of the hardware engineering team while I was at Apple, and I really wanted to get more into like the operations side. So I'm on the technical operations team. And essentially what that means is like my team works to set up our production line from, when you're making those first prototypes all the way to when you're trying to make thousands of these to ship to customers, and making sure like, okay, does the camera actually work? Does like when you're trying to play music, does it actually play music? Does it sound right? And then also like, because it can do so many different things, you have to like calibrate for the different components to make sure they work properly together. So like when you're doing things like image stabilization, like you can read off like how the device is moving to make it so like the image isn't like just all over the place, and you can do just a lot of cool things when you can know that like, okay, I know that this is functioning properly, so now I can do all these other things. And so a lot more, I think, goes into such a tiny device than maybe people would realize. It's obviously not to the scale of iPhone where, you have hundreds of production lines all over the world, but, maybe someday we'll get there.
That's the goal, right?
Yes, of course.
That's the goal of getting into like a smaller company.
Yeah.
And kind of from that ground and trying to build that up, right?
We were talking about acoustics on the Pin, right?
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about the acoustics on the Pin. I mean, not that I went through the full gambit, but walk us through that.
We essentially test both like the mic and the speaker on device to make sure that it's functioning properly. And so there's essentially what happens is it goes down the line and then it gets put into the box and it plays some sounds. We essentially make sure that so we essentially make like a very tiny version of what we're sitting in right now to make sure we block out as many signals as possible or sounds that would come into the chamber. And so then we can test to make sure that both like we play a little audio, we capture that audio file on the device, and then when you play it back on the computer, like, does it sound good? Does it not sound good? We don't like, that's not the actual process. What we're looking at is actually the signal, but like essentially what that is testing is like
the DSP, basic digital signal processing,
yes, exactly.
the NIMS, all this stuff that's in there.
Yep. So I am not an acoustics engineer. I don't, but I am a mechanical engineer, so I can build a box, build things to put inside of it.
It's awesome.
Everyone does their part.
Yeah.
It takes a team.
Yeah. No, it definitely takes
part.
a team. And then our acoustics engineer, like this last time, tells me, DJ, why would you put that right here? Like, obviously the reflections would be terrible. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
I'm learning.
Maybe one day I'll make a box without reflections. But today that was not.
You guys have had some pretty incredible career opportunities already at this point. Apple, Netflix, Humane. I want to hear more about that. Like, what would you say to someone that's like maybe a sophomore, junior in college, they're slogging their way through linear algebra, about the opportunities and the career experiences like that they can look forward to in a career in STEM?
I can start with, so I think a lot of what I kind of described with like, I liked math. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I think, DJ actually helped me with this kind of early in my career of like, he always knew like he loved Apple products. I think we all did. So that's like, or we all do, or most of us do. So that's like an easy kind of add in or, like lead in to saying like, I want to work for Apple. But when I got out to the Bay Area and I was still in consulting, it was kind of like, what do I think, like what kind of companies get me excited? And I think STEM is required in a lot of those companies. And so I think with math, it was like, okay, I've done this type of thing. How can I leverage that type of experience to say, find someone that's doing something similar? And maybe they're not at a company like I want to work at tomorrow, but just really being open to just reaching out to any and all people that work in those types of areas and saying, hey, I have a similar experience. I saw you did this here, and kind of just going from that route. I think I was really happy and lucky that Netflix reached out to me, but I've been there now for 6 years and made my way through a couple different teams at the company. And I think it's really just about saying, maybe you don't have that direct experience or that direct, interest right now, but I think just being open-minded that like I said, I was in a theoretical math class, and I never thought that I would be working with Samsung on, the icon placement. So I think just knowing that STEM has a lot of power and just being open to asking questions to people at different organizations, I think there's a lot more in common than maybe we think. I mean, we're talking to Acoustics guys about, Netflix, and you have a lot more tie-ins, but, the STEM industry, I think, is small when you need it to be, right? It's large in terms of all the things you can do, but just finding the connections where you can and just saying, hey, I'm interested in this. Can you tell me more about something you may have done in that area?
Did you say like talking to a human?
Yeah,
reaching
exactly.
out. Wow. This is something that for a lot of our STEM students is that's terrifying.
Yeah. No, I get that. I think though that's one of the great things about like the tech world is you don't really have a lot of the same stories. Like you have a lot of people that have various backgrounds and stories in terms of like a lot of times people are like, you're from Wisconsin? Like, what do people do in Wisconsin? In California type of thing. And it's like, everyone has a different background. I think that kind of what makes it human in that aspect, that a lot of the tech world, there's no really one size fits all. And so STEM, I think, is a good fit for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo, I think, everything Lauren said. I mean, I think, Samuel, you, I think, hit the nail on the head for a lot of STEM people, like, making that first, like, introduction or email or call or what have you is terrifying, but I think that, I mean, it pays dividends. I think that, like, but I guess also in that, like, if you are, like, a little bit more nervous, I mean, I would hope that, like, most colleges nowadays, especially in the STEM fields, bring in a ton of companies to like chat with classes and all those things. And I think a lot of those like really small companies or just like in very unique things can lead to like really interesting opportunities. I mean, like my second internship and my first one in California was at a company that did x-ray inspecting of food packaging. And then like that random like x-ray experience when like the intended team was looking for someone was like, oh, this kid has actually had some experience. And it's like, I never would have thought that like Apple would care about, how I had worked on x-raying food packaging. So I think it's just like you never know like how your experience can feed into things. Just like Lauren was saying, oh, like when I was sitting in my theoretical math class, I didn't think I'd be looking at icon placement. And so I think it's just, you never really know how your experience will fit in. So like talking with people and seeing, or just with recruiters, I think can often be a really good thing. And I think something a recruiter told me early on that I always really thought about, and Lauren kind of hit on, is like learning to tell your story, because your story is unique and is personal to you. And so like figuring out like how you can tell your story will be huge in developing your career.
Thanks for coming, guys. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
it was great. Thanks for the conversation. It was a great thing to be here today.
Yeah. I'd say the first podcast was not too intimidating.
Yeah.